Well, hello everyone. Going live for the final round of the season. We figure we'd coincide that with selection. That'll drop in the next 10 or so minutes. But as always, put your comments through on the page as they're ticking over, and we'll try to get to those as soon as we can. I guess pleasingly, but frustratingly, we've probably mentioned 3 or 4 times in the second half of the year, oh, that was our best win of the year, or that was our best performance of the year. Certainly the Sydney win. I mean, even the Essendon performance, you could throw that in there. But this second half effort against Geelong was definitely it, with everything coming together, the flow, the pressure, the scoring, the pace. I think most distance covered by any team, and just that real appetite to run, and against a side that could have locked in a top four spot officially had they have won that game. So they certainly had everything to play for, and really just toyed with them. It was a demolition in the second half. It was very, very similar to a game we played against Hawthorn back in 2008 when we were 34 points down at halftime and won by 5 goals. Hawthorn recovered from that pretty well and won the flag. So if any Cats fans by some chance have tuned in, I wouldn't be too concerned. But yeah, Nick, I guess kicking that off, it was a tremendous effort after half time. And it's one of those results that's a tiny bit bittersweet, because you're like, well, cool, we're on the right track, but it does emphasise the wasted year factor.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the first half, I think we were all kind of sitting there going, oh, this again. You know, we couldn't get hands on the ball. We couldn't keep it when we got it. Missed opportunities. You know, we would wrestle back momentum for a couple of minutes and then lose it with, either ill discipline or poor decision making or whatever. And then half time hits and we're going, oh. I think I said to you, H, we met up at half time up in one of the bars, and I think at that stage it's like, let's just watch the second half in the bar, because it's going to get pretty ugly, I think. And then when we kicked the first couple real quick, we just decided, well, we're in the spot now. We're not moving. It was just an astonishing change of pace for us, I think. We not only got hands on the ball and won the ball, but we also kept it. We were direct. We protected it. We protected ourselves, our men, our teammates. And it was almost the perfect half, but it was probably the best football we've played properly with a decent squad in. I know we're obviously still missing some key pillars in that team, but with a decent team, probably the best footy we've played under Ross since he's come back. And that was really nice to see. I know the season's kind of lost and whatever, but if there's anything that we want to take from the last few weeks of the year and the last month or so, is that we can play good football. The way that Ross wants us to play is the right way for us to go, which is run hard, deliver it, be direct, and try and score heavily. We want to score heavily. We want to score in bunches, and we want to hit the scoreboard, and that's exactly what we've shown, I think, generally over the last 6 or 8 weeks, and I think the results show that on the scorecard.
Yeah, they do, H. And it's funny, those superstitions about not moving and, finding a good spot, and, the old cricketers mentality where, if there's a big partnership, no one goes to the toilet or anything of that nature. But, yeah, as Nick said, it's a good building block. It feels like they've laid or are laying a foundation that, is hopefully a blueprint for what they can do.
Yeah, well, adding to what Nick said, I think Nick was up and down on the chair that he was sitting on, and I was running a track into the car, but I was walking back and forward on it. It was a nice little spot, and we believe it did work, because we left that spot and Geelong kicked the last 2 goals. So
that's right.
It was a nice little spot we found, and I think we'll have to visit it a few times in the future. But yeah, I mean, you look at the season now in 10 wins, potentially 11. 6 losses under 10 points. I mean, there's potentially 17 victories in the season if we had the ability to win those close games. That's a potential 17 victories. The other ones, there's a few obviously we were blown out of the water, or the other team was just way too good on the night, and a couple of other games that we were leading or close as well that ended up being. We came back against Brisbane too. We came in, got to within, I think it was 7 points against them. And yeah, just some of the football we've seen in periods this year have just been like, look, if we can keep putting that sort of those performances together more consistently and be the team that wins those close games, like you see Collingwood do and that sort of thing, why can't we be 15 wins and fighting for a top 4 spot? Or yeah, it's just that finishing and that's been the story in a lot of games, the finishing. And that's the reason probably why we won on the weekend. The way we used the ball, moved it into the forward line in that second half, and the way we finished off the play, that's as good at a football we have seen for a long time, a very long time. That second half's up there with some of the best football we've probably seen in our lives. And it was just flowing and free. And I think Scott described us as at times looking like the Harlem Globetrotters, that we were just the way we ran around them. I don't know what it was that clicked. Was there something in the water at halftime, whatever. We just came out a completely different team. And it was just, we were sitting there absolutely stunned, but at the same time, clearly loving what they were doing.
Yeah, it's not like Scott to do the mayo or the bit of the exaggeration on a performance, but yeah, and the way I kind of look at it is that you're trying to execute it a certain way, and for all of the people questioning our scoring, we've actually kicked 100 points more times since Ross Lyon came back than we did in Brett Ratton's entire tenure. So, which gives a bit of an emphasis. Our defensive numbers have improved. Our offensive numbers have stayed roughly the same or got marginally better in patches. So I think it's, as Ross has even alluded to himself, it's a lazy narrative when people talk about the scoring aspect of it. But if we break those close games down on the year, I think there's 2 that we should have won. Obviously, most of them were outplayed. In Geelong outplayed us a bit. Port the first time probably outplayed us. The Giants were all over us until late in the game. But certainly Essendon the first time, and then probably Port Adelaide the second time at Marvel were probably 2 games that we should have won, which would have got us to 12. And then that would have made this game against Carlton a virtual elimination final. So that just shows you how fine a line it is ultimately, and only with ourselves to blame. And it's funny, we looked at the Brisbane game and thought, oh, well, that's the reality, that's where we're at, that's that's an indication of how much work we have to do. But if that's the case, then what are the Sydney and the Geelong games? So that's where you look at it on both sides of the coin. Like the Sydney and the Geelong game are the what happens if it works, and the Brisbane game is the what happens if it doesn't. And they're the fine lines in AFL football these days. But if you are tuning in on YouTube, apologies for the odd technical difficulties. If you have missed any of what we've done, it will go up very shortly. The team selection is almost out, so you should still be able to get that live, and we have a bit of a chat about it in a moment. Obviously, there's at least one force change with Caminiti not able to play this week as a result of the shoulder, which he had been carrying a bit through it. But we might tie a bow around the Geelong game with the votes. There was a stack to like and a stack of contenders that we can talk about there. I'm actually going to, when we talk futures later, actually going to make a Family Guy reference, which I don't think I've ever done on this podcast before. But my votes, it's another one where, similar to the Essendon game, feel like you could give lots of players more votes than I did, but gave one to Hunter Clark. I thought his ball use was telling, and in the last quarter he was hugely instrumental. Rowan Marshall played another huge game. Feels like a ruckman, getting 28 possessions and kicking a goal and 30 hit-outs and all the clearances, deserves more than one vote. I thought Higgins was very good all day. He got a fair bit of the ball, pushed up the ground, kicked 3. Jack Steele was excellent. I think it's the first player in the AFL this year to take 10 marks and lay 10 tackles in the same game. And he had 27 and kicked 2 goals. Then you throw in what was a really good performance from Darcy Wilson, probably his best game. He was outstanding with 25 and 5 scoring shots. But then Cal Wilkie, you can't play much better than that as a defender to take 15 marks. I think 8 as intercepts, had 27 possessions, I think, and just repelled everything that Geelong threw at him. He's played some good games, Cal Wilkie, but not many better than that. Nick, how did you split your 10?
Pretty similar. I, like you, I gave 1 to Marshall and Higgins. Just competed all day, even when things weren't going our way in the first half. I thought they still attacked and competed really hard. I gave another 1 to Jack Sinclair, who, on another day might have gotten 2 or 3 for that performance. I thought, he's so calm and cool and collected when he's got the ball, and I think he's gotten better at his defensive efforts as well. He's also calm under pressure when he doesn't have the ball, when he's corralling, when he's chasing and harassing, and there is just, it makes such a difference when your senior players and your good players are patient and calm and they're able to kind of see what's ahead of them and still keep their cool and make things happen. I gave 2 to Darcy Wilson. I mean, he's had a couple of really good games already this year, but that was a breakout game and a half, and he's going to be a real find for us for the next decade if that sort of trend line continues, because he's hit the scoreboard all year. He knows how to find the ball. He can run. He can kick long. He can do just about everything, and he's got some good size and good height, and really looking forward to what he can do down the line. I gave 2 to Jack Steele. It was a real captain's game, I thought, from Jack Steele, and one of his best games for the season. Really stood up when it counted, especially late in the second quarter and then early in the third. When the ball was there to be won, he just went in there and did it. Really led from the front in the first kind of 5 or 10 minutes of the third quarter. Stood and delivered. Whatever cliche and phrase you want to throw at a captain to go in there and win the ball, he did it, and he deserves it. He was just outshone by the best player on the ground by an absolute mile. It was Callum Wilkie, who, like you said, Darren, has played some immense games for us, and that was probably his best game. And he was just astonishingly good. The way that he reads the ball and floats around a contest, I'm not sure I've seen anyone do it to the level that he does. There's a lot of good intercept defenders in the league, and there have been for the last few years. But for a guy who's not, extreme size, I'm not sure there's a better pound for pound defender in the competition at the moment. And that was, like you said, potentially his finest game in the red, white, and black.
H, how did you share your 10?
Yeah, all very similar. If I had one more vote, I'd be apologies to, I thought, Zach Jones. I thought he did a great job on the night. He's continued on the form that he's been showing. Sharman, he was a little bit more. He was probably very close to getting one. I reckon Hugo Garcia, if he played a full game, he would be in the votes without a doubt. That was the time that he was out there. The impact he had on the game itself was unbelievable. Dougal Howard, unfortunate as well. It was he went at 100% disposal efficiency, had 9 1-percenters, 7 spoils on the night. It just a brilliant defender game, but it was clearly overshadowed by another defender. That was his only issue with them all up. Gave 1 to Higgins. I mean, 3 goals, 3 goal assists, 17 touches. Great game. He did everything he could down the forward line. Finally got a nice reward for the work that he's been doing over these weeks. 1 to Sinclair, again, 26 disposals. Already I think it was 19 pressure acts or something, and 9 score involvements as well. Wilson gave him 1. Robbed of 3 goals. That I don't know how that one that went through the middle wasn't picked up, that it went through the middle of the goals. It was clear as day. So yeah, robbed of a 3-goal match and could have pushed me over to. He still kicked it. I could have pushed him up to 2, but just had a few ahead of him. 2 to Marshall. He just does Rowan things every week in, week out as he does. Then he almost start him at 2, and if he has a little bit quiet, he gets 1, and he tears it up, he gets 4. So Jack Steele, it's came up to the fact that he had what they were calling a quadruple double. He had over 10 kicks, marks, handballs, tackles, but he also had 10 score involvements. So I'm almost going, it's a quintuple double. It's a, the 2 goals which we needed at the time he kicked them, and go by that. I think go by that quadruple double as well. It was only the 9th time in AFL history it's happened or something. So it's a huge game, and only 2 votes is probably a bit unfair on the day, but Cal Wilkie down back, monster, absolute monster. 28 touches, 15 marks, and 100% game time. Did not take a rest at any point, which is it's a fantastic effort.
Extended squad is in, which we'll touch on later. So being a Sunday game, so Caminiti out, and then in is Filippo, Jack Hayes. It was interesting, the debate around which tall they'd go with. Angus McLennan and Tom Campbell's in the extended squad. So it felt like some chance for like a Keeler potential debut, but maybe Jack Hayes, who certainly has earned his keep when he's played, might get another opportunity. So if you assume Hayes plays for Caminiti, then Filippo plays for someone else. So we'll work that out a little bit later on.
Probably a shot to miss, given
maybe
with the back.
Yeah. Possibly. He was certainly spasming in that back, and he has been a little bit quiet and does have a newborn at home, so probably wouldn't mind the feet up, and an extended break wouldn't be the worst thing for him. Had a pretty good year. The other awards, the easier and the hard this week, but Nick, the Jason Blake Award first of all.
Really interesting one. I thought it was hard because there were a lot of players that could have had votes in this one, and to narrow it down to only kind of 4 or 5 or 6 players was difficult, even though I think those couple were the standouts. But Tim Membry's last month has really shown how important he is to this team, and has been. And I know over the last few years his role has been that kind of that forward line leader, drops down back in the last couple of minutes of a quarter and really stands up that way to be an intercept marker and whatever. But I think his leadership inside forward 50 over the last month or so has been sorely needed. He's gotten some votes in those last couple of weeks on our show anyway, but I just wanted to give him some credit because this week may be the last time that we see Tim Membry. I hope not. I hope that they give him another year because he's on his form. He deserves it. It'd be up to him, I guess. But just wanted to give him some credit potentially for the last time. And again, I hope it's not. But his last month, his last 5 or 6 weeks has been very, very good, and not a lot of people have spoken about it.
Absolutely, H.
It's tough on this week. I mean, we've given votes to about 7 or 8 of the players. There's 15, 16 players that you could almost give it to this week. But let's just go with our first half. Let's start a game well. Let's get the momentum going early this week. So as a whole, let's hit the ground running this week. Let's all just get up and about, and they're all flying. That after what they've done last week, let's see. I don't know. Let's have 10 different players we haven't given any votes to this year be our best 10 this week coming up. It'll be great to see it. And I mean, there's no player that you could have had a go at for not being in there in that second half. They all showed so much. And I mean, our sub came on and had an impact. Even Hill, who had been down a little bit, the few things he did were great. But let's just get a great start, and it'd be great to see the team just gel as one and finish off, hopefully, Carlton season this week.
A player that was involved in a lot of plays when if you have a look at the highlights now, like he's in the chain of a lot of our scores. He missed a couple that he would probably like to have converted, but Liam Stocker thought some of his work in the middle, also restricting a couple of their prime movers at times. He got ahead of the footy and won possessions. Paddy Dow was probably similar, another ex-Blue in that space, but Liam Stocker, I think, another pretty unheralded performance from him. Had he have kicked a couple of snags, he would have probably almost jagged a vote, I would think. But yeah, he gets mine for this week. H kind of probably rolled both into one, but Nick, you're Shannon Knoll.
This is going to be harsh because it's on a couple of blokes that played for Sandringham on the weekend. Heath, Keeler, and a bunch of those blokes had the perfect opportunity with, a few going down, Caminiti and Hill and whatever, and potentially a whole lot to play for. Not a whole lot to play for the senior guys this coming week, but there are a bunch of guys that had the perfect opportunity to put their hand up at Sandringham to say, I deserve to play next week. I need a crack before the end of the season. And none of them did. None of them who were in that band of guys that we kept talking about as, maybe ready for a debut, maybe ready for a crack, and let's see what they can do in the last few weeks of the season. None of those guys, Heath, Keeler, Allison, etc., none of them put their hands up and said, you need to pick me for the last round. And I thought that was disappointing and probably showed a little bit about, where Sandy's been this season. They've been up and down, and where our depth is a little bit at the moment. So I thought that was disappointing. And, some of those guys that have been on the fringes for the second half of this season and not quite cracked it for a debut, I thought those guys needed to lift, and they didn't.
Yeah, and also in a tight game for Sandringham's season, it was absolutely pivotal as well with them going down. H, did you have another you wanted to squeeze in?
Well, the way I was going to roll that in was actually say that the players, any of the four who have been put into the extended squad that do come in, they've got to lift to that level this week. They've got to hit the ground running, and that's sort of where I was going to roll into it about the saying that the team is flying after that effort. They've got to jump in and be ready to go because, it's last game of the season, last chance to impress. If you come into a team that's just done that, you've got to be ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Probably a tricky one from mine. It's harsh because he's had a cracking season, but I thought Nass a couple of times in the first half in terms of decision making. He was much better in the second half, but first half, some of his disposal was a touch. Lazy is not the right word, but maybe casual. And he certainly still needs to back himself around goal. That one where he was 45 out and then passed it to Sinclair that only went about 8 metres and got called play on. He's an elite user of the ball, so we just need him trying to drill those. So it's not really a lift per se, but it's a potential within a star to maybe elevate again to another level potentially. But
there was another moment like that with Mason Wood when he kicked it to Brad Hill.
Yeah.
And he kicked his goal and he went off pretty much straight after that. But Mason Wood's, 6'3", 6'4", knows how to find the goals, has kicked plenty of them in his career. And for him to take a mark kind of 38 meters, 48 meters out, almost directly in front, and then kick laterally to Brad Hill, who's ultimately not a noted goal kicker, was strange. And I guess on the same note, we need those guys to have more of a killer instinct individually. And when you're there and you're directly in front, and you can quite easily, like that was his range is
very kickable.
Got to kick that,
very kickable. Like Mason Wood had no reason outside of a crisis of confidence to not kick that.
Like the play on when he kicked his goal in the second quarter, where similar thing. He didn't want to have the shot. He played on and drilled it.
For us to develop, we need to develop that killer instinct, and those guys just need to instinctually go and kick that goal.
We'll have a look at Carlton now. Obviously, their injury list is substantial. Worth probably noting who they've picked. Obviously, they ruled out Harry Mackay and a couple of others a few days back, but Obviously, our changes that we mentioned before. So Caminiti won't play, as we know, and then it's a question of whether they just go small and play Filippo, or whether Filippo plays for Hill, as we said, and they pick Hayes, which is the likely outcome for Caminiti, to try to maintain that structure. But from a Carlton point of view, Curnow, Sard and Fantasia in, no outs, and obviously the extended squad, we'll see what they do from there. But obviously they're still missing quite a few. But they did beat West Coast by 10 goals. But their last 3 wins have been West Coast, North and Richmond. So putting that in perspective, that's 18, 17, 16. Their form has been wobbly around that. It is a winnable game, but they're going to have everything to play for, similar to Geelong, because the side that can knock them out of the 8 plays after they do. So they're not going to know if they're safe. They're not going to be safe. So they're going to have to get a result against us. And for us, it's a case of trying to claim another scalp. It's not so much about ruining anyone's season. That doesn't bother me too much. It's just more about building our own momentum. But what are your thoughts? I mean, Nick, heading along, big crowd, Carlton home game. It'd be nice to spoil the party for no other reason than our own benefit, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we turn up, I think we win. I think Carlton, like you said, they're wobbly at the moment. That they haven't beaten anyone in the last 2 months, really. They've essentially lost themselves a guaranteed home final, basically, in the last 6 weeks. And yeah, look, they're a good team, but they're inexperienced at some level. I think they had a lot of expectations on them, and that they've probably felt that coming into the run home this year. And I think they're gettable. I 100% think they're gettable. And it would be amazing to finish up next weekend knowing that we've helped keep Essendon, Carlton, and Collingwood out of the 8 by beating them, whenever possible this year. Obviously, we had the one loss to Essendon, but they're not going to make it anyway. But that would just be a really nice feeling, I think, in a season where we have not a lot to play for on Sunday to potentially end their season. For anyone getting there, for anyone going, get there early, unless you've bought the exorbitant members tickets. Get there early, stand, do whatever you got to do, but make some noise. Is the last time we'll see them for a little bit. So get there, make some noise and cheer them home. And hopefully we can end the Blues season.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You'd wonder whether Sard and Curnow would be playing if the game wasn't Sunday afternoon, and whether they're still
Maybe,
right
yeah.
to go. That's the other question. Are they right to go? Because they're a hamstring and what looked like at first a really bad ankle injury, which at times looked like it was even potentially a Achilles. The way that he went, it was barely a roll. It was barely anything. It just went. Are they going to be playing? That's one of the questions I sort of when I saw him in the team. I was a bit surprised, to be honest. So whether they aren't fit, and that's something we can take a little bit of advantage against, and they're definitely just crawling into the finals if they make it. I mean, they can still lose and make it, but obviously they're relying on the game after them. They're going to throw everything at it, you assume, but yeah, they are a little bit bruised and battered, and it's a opportunity to take down a team that's fighting for something, and be the celebration of 16 other teams on the day. Then there'll be a few others cheering us on as we saw Mick Malloy even dressing up in security gear on the front bar last night. And so it's a bit of, I guess, bragging rights ahead of it all, and going to next year with a few wins behind us and start again.
Yeah, it's such an even season too that you feel like it's a bit more of a waste, in that even the leading contenders have all had wobbles. Sydney, Brisbane, Port, Geelong themselves, all of those teams. I mean, the start of the year, if that had said Collingwood and Melbourne would miss the 8, that would have been very surprising. But yeah, it'd be just nice. I mean, if we were to win this, it's 8 of our last 12. It's 8-4 in the second half of the year. You win 11 for the season. You're only out of the 8 by probably a game and a half. So you've set a bit of a platform that you're not too far away. It looked like we're a bottom 4 side through most of the first half of the season, but it's interesting putting all of that in perspective. Just a couple of things before we wrap up, a shorter one today, but the Josh Battle question, I've spoken to a lot of Saints fans who have mentioned they're kind of feeling about 40-60 or 50-50, and that's probably about right. But one thing I wanted to say, and like everybody has opinions and views, and that's entirely fine, but there's been a lot of talk on X around, it's fine if Josh Battle goes because we'll get a band 1 compo and we'll get a pick after our current selection, and we'll get 2 really good players. And this is where the Family Guy analogy comes into it, where you're holding an asset that is good, and what you're hoping is that the asset you replace it with is also good. So you can't really sell that as a positive because that's a risk. Now, you remember the episode in Family Guy where it's like you can either take the boat or the box. The box could be anything. It could even be a boat. Well, that's kind of how I see it, where it's like you've got the boat and you're kind of happy to lose the boat. So you get a box, and in the box might be another boat. It's better to not take that risk and to ideally hold on to the asset that you already have. Obviously, that's ultimately up to Josh, and who knows. But I think logically, the best case scenario is you keep the good player because there's no guarantee that the guy you draft is a good player. Plus, our defence is a top 4 defence in the comp, and he's one of the pillars of that. And I know we need midfield strength, but if you can maintain an asset, which is our defence, then you work on building the midfield through the draft with your early pick anyway, someone like a Layla, and then you continue to build Filippo and Garcia and that type of thing. But yeah, I'm probably in that 40-60 camp, I guess, in summary, H. I don't know where you're sitting on it.
Yeah, I was a bit more confident from just bits and pieces I've been hearing previously that he was staying. But yeah, a couple of things I've heard and we've been like, oh, okay, it's not as close as what it sounds like now, or it's just gone back to about that 50-50. We've heard that whole we'll look at it after the season thing now. That's one of the things you quite often hear and go, okay, we quite often know what that means. And it's just it's an interesting one, whether there's been an offer there and knocked back, or it probably has been, obviously, but yeah, whether what it would have had to have been for us to put up to keep him there. Have we not found him to be, I don't know, worth whatever it is that we're going up against? Or it'd be interesting to see what happens, and it could be as early as start of next week we find out exactly what's going on.
I'm with you, Parko. I kind of feel like now, especially after the last 2.5 months, where Josh Battle has proved his value over the last 2 months, the last 8-10 weeks, whatever, since the bye. At this stage, the type of team, the squad we are, the way that we're built and the way that we structure, you keep the good players. It's not like he's 30 and may not be there in the next 2 or 3 years when we have a crack. But he's 26. He's going to be 27. I would be hopeful that our next window is kind of 2026, 27, 28, 29. That's our next window. Because if it isn't, then we're stuffed, because that's when Tassie comes in and a whole lot of more draft concessions, and we'll probably be good enough by then to be in the 8, but hopefully but maybe not good enough to have a crack. And if that's the case, I'll be really disappointed. So the club internally will be aiming for that 26, 27, 28, 29 period as when we're building to have another crack. And if that's the case, then we're going to want 28-year-old, 29-year-old Josh Battle in the peak of his form, fitness, career, to kind of lead that defensive unit as he has been for the last 2 months. So I would much rather keep Josh Battle, especially now that we're hearing that the calculations may not have been right.
Hmm.
And that band 1 compensation is actually band 2 because of the total player payments increasing next year. That $850, $900K contract is potentially not enough to trigger band 1. So, if it's, I'm just on the fence a little bit about Battle or pick 5, for instance, but I still lean towards Battle. And if it's Battle or pick 25, I mean, it's Josh Battle every day of the week. So, look, I hope he stays, but the word out of the club is that they're not confident. And so that's shaken me a little in the last 24 hours.
Yeah. It is fascinating how it all lands. Obviously, we'll find out probably fairly quickly once the season's over, maybe within a fortnight. But yeah, and look, for our review episode, that's where we might look at the hard calls that we posed on Twitter in regards to Seb Ross, Zach Jones, Brad Crouch, those Zane Cordy, those sorts of players, and what the future means. Tim Membry may be becoming an easier decision based on his form. Is Zach Jones buying himself a contract? We'll see. The interesting one is Jack Hayes getting picked. I did hear a whisper from a few people in the know that he was told by a surgeon that it would be in his best interest to retire. But if he is having another crack at it, good on him. I mean, obviously he's had a shocking run of injuries with feet and legs and knees and everything else. But look, we've seen him every time he's played. We just look a little bit better. So before we finish up, obviously the girls will get underway pretty soon. Their first matches on the Gold Coast. They played a couple of prackies. They got belted by North, who were possibly the best team in it, and they flogged West Coast, who were possibly the worst team in it. So does that mean they land in the middle? Obviously, last year they missed the finals by an absolute whisker on that last day of the season when Sydney beat Freo in Perth. So hopefully Dal, who's been a good guest on our show in the past, can get them up this year. It was good to be a part of that season launch earlier in the week and sort of hear a few of his thoughts in regards to the year ahead. So hopefully the girls can do pretty well. So just a reminder that Saints footy will continue well after this Carlton clash on Sunday. And it also cheers to all of the well wishes for the off season. You haven't got rid of us just yet. We've still got a couple more that we'll put in the can and maybe a couple more guests on the journey as well. But it's been good to go live. We look forward to Sunday, hopefully win number 11, getting close to an even season. And we can do the report card once that's all settled. But thanks for tuning in and go Saints.